Imagine waking up tomorrow, opening your phone, and seeing one headline everywhere. America's debt just reached a breaking point. You see it on the news, you see people arguing about it online, experts are warning about it. But then you look around, and everything seems normal. People are driving to work, restaurants are full, stores are open, your paycheck still arrives. So you might think, if America's debt is such a huge problem, why doesn't anything feel different? And that's the most dangerous part. Because the biggest financial problems rarely look like disasters in the beginning. They look normal. Think about someone who slowly gets trapped in debt. At first, they buy something using a credit card. No problem. Then they add another purchase, then another. Each decision feels small, almost harmless. But over time, the interest starts growing faster than they realize. Eventually, they're not paying for the things they bought anymore. They're paying for the cost of borrowing money. And that's exactly how debt becomes dangerous. Not because of one huge mistake, but because small decisions keep stacking on top of each other. Now imagine that happening on a completely different scale. Instead of one person, imagine the world's largest economy, the United States. For decades, America has borrowed money to pay for wars, economic emergencies, infrastructure, healthcare programs, and many other national priorities. Borrowing money itself is not unusual. Families borrow, businesses borrow, governments borrow. The problem isn't having debt. The problem is when the cost of that debt starts becoming harder to manage. And that's what has changed. For years, borrowing money was extremely cheap. Interest rates were low. The government could borrow huge amounts without feeling immediate pressure. But after inflation increased and interest rates climbed, the cost of carrying that debt became much larger. Imagine you have a loan with a small monthly payment. You can handle it easily. Then suddenly, the interest rate increases. You still owe the same amount, but now a bigger part of your money goes toward interest. You aren't building anything new, you're just paying for the past. That's the challenge America is facing today. A growing amount of money is going toward interest payments instead of future investments. And here's why this matters to ordinary people. Government finances don't exist in a separate world. They connect to the economy around you. Higher borrowing costs can affect interest rates. Interest rates affect mortgages. Mortgages affect housing. Housing affects millions of families. The same system that influences government borrowing also influences your everyday financial life. But to understand where America is going, we first need to understand how it got here. Because this didn't happen overnight. It wasn't caused by one person, one decision, or one single event. It happened slowly, over decades. And the reason is surprisingly similar to how many people get into personal debt. They don't fall into a financial problem all at once. They get there one small decision at a time.
So how did America build up so much debt? The answer is not one big mistake. It's thousands of smaller decisions made over many years. Think about a family budget. A family earns $6,000 every month, but they spend $6,500. At first, that extra $500 doesn't feel like a disaster. Maybe they put it on a credit card. Maybe they take a small loan. They tell themselves, "I'll fix it later." But if that keeps happening month after month, the debt starts growing, and eventually, a larger part of their income goes toward paying old bills instead of creating a better future. Government debt works in a similar way. Every year, the U.S. government collects money through taxes, but when it spends more than it collects, it creates what's called a budget deficit. To cover that difference, the government borrows money. 1 year of borrowing may not seem like a problem, but when it happens repeatedly for decades, the debt keeps getting larger. And then something important happens. Debt creates another expense, interest. The bigger the debt becomes, the more money is needed just to pay the interest on that debt. For a long time, this wasn't a major concern because borrowing was cheap. Interest rates stayed low for many years. It was like having a huge loan with a very small monthly payment. But then, inflation changed the situation. Prices started rising quickly. To slow inflation, the Federal Reserve increased interest rates, and suddenly, borrowing became much more expensive, not just for ordinary people, for everyone. Your mortgage rate increased, car loans became more expensive, business loans became more expensive, and government borrowing became more expensive too. Here's a simple example. Imagine you owe $100,000. At a low interest rate, the yearly cost of that debt may feel manageable. But if the interest rate rises, you could suddenly be paying thousands more every year. You didn't borrow extra money, the debt didn't get bigger, but the cost of keeping that debt increased. That's the key problem. America's challenge isn't only the size of its debt, it's the growing cost of maintaining it. And this creates a cycle. More debt means more interest. More interest means more spending pressure. More spending pressure can lead to more borrowing. The cycle continues. Now, this doesn't mean America is about to collapse tomorrow. The United States has major advantages. It has one of the world's largest economies. The US dollar is used globally. Investors around the world still consider US government bonds among the safest investments. These advantages give America more time and more options than many other countries. But even the strongest systems have limits. Think about carrying a backpack. At first, a 10-pound backpack feels easy. You barely notice it. Then someone adds another 10 pounds. You can still walk. Then another 10 pounds. You can still move forward. But every step becomes harder. The backpack doesn't stop you immediately, it slowly reduces your ability to move freely. That's the concern with rising debt. Not that America suddenly stops working, but that the growing cost of debt slowly limits future choices. And those choices eventually affect everyone. Because when a country spends more money paying for the past, there is less money available to build the future. And that's where this story becomes personal, because the national debt isn't just a number on a government website. It can influence the economy that affects your home, your job, and your investments. So, why should you care about a debt that belongs to the government? After all, you don't make decisions in Washington. You don't sign the government's checks. So, why does it matter? Because the economy is connected. When something changes at the top, the effects eventually reach everyone else. Let's take a simple example. Imagine you're finally ready to buy your first home. You've spent years saving for a down payment. You find the perfect house. Then your bank tells you the mortgage rate is much higher than it was just a few years ago. Suddenly, your monthly payment jumps by hundreds of dollars. Same house, same salary, very different budget. Government debt isn't the only reason borrowing costs rise, but when the government has to borrow large amounts of money in a higher interest rate environment, it can add pressure to the financial system. That makes borrowing more expensive across the economy. And it's not just home buyers who feel it. Small businesses may delay expanding, companies may hire fewer workers, families may postpone buying a car. Young entrepreneurs may decide to not start a business. When borrowing becomes expensive, the economy can slow down. Now think about the government's budget. Imagine your paycheck arrives every month, but before you spend a single dollar, a big part of it automatically goes toward old debt. Credit card payments, car loans, student loans. By the time those bills are paid, there's much less money left for your future. The government faces a similar challenge. The more it spends on interest, the less flexibility it has for new priorities like infrastructure, education, scientific research, or responding to future emergencies. Economists call this opportunity cost. Every dollar spent in one place can't be spent somewhere else. And that's the hidden cost of debt that most people never see. But there's another piece that's just as important: confidence. The U.S. economy works because millions of investors around the world believe America will continue paying its obligations. That trust keeps demand for U.S. Treasury bonds strong and helps the government borrow more easily than many other countries. It's one of America's greatest financial strengths. But trust has to be maintained. If investors ever began demanding much higher returns to lend money, borrowing could become even more expensive. The good news is that the United States still has powerful advantages. It has the world's largest economy, the U.S. dollar remains the world's leading reserve currency, and U.S. financial markets remain among the strongest and most trusted anywhere. Those strengths don't make debt disappear, but they do give the country more options than most nations have. So no, this isn't a prediction that America is about to collapse. It's a reminder that debt has consequences. Sometimes those consequences appear slowly. Sometimes they show up in higher borrowing costs, slower economic growth, or tougher budget choices. The national debt isn't just about government finances. It's about the economic environment that affects your paycheck, your investments, and your future. So the biggest question isn't whether America has debt, it's this: what can America actually do about it, and what lessons can we learn for our own financial lives? Because the answer might be more hopeful than you think. So, what happens next? Is America about to go bankrupt? Will the economy suddenly collapse? Should everyone panic? Probably not. And that's because countries don't work the same way households do. The United States still has one of the strongest economies in the world. Millions of people want to invest in America. The U.S. dollar remains the world's primary reserve currency. Those are powerful advantages. But even strong economies can't ignore one simple rule forever. Debt becomes a problem when its cost grows faster than your ability to manage it. So how does America move forward? Economists generally point to three possibilities. First, grow the economy. If businesses become more productive, people earn more money. Companies hire more workers. Tax revenue grows without necessarily raising tax rates. A bigger economy makes existing debt easier to manage. Second, reduce future deficits. That means spending closer to what the government collects in taxes. It's simple in theory, but difficult in practice. Every spending cut affects someone. Every tax change is controversial. That's why solving the debt problem takes years, not months. Third, keep inflation under control. Stable inflation helps create a healthier environment for borrowing, investing, and long-term economic growth. There isn't one magic fix. It's likely to require a combination of better growth, responsible budgeting, and smart long-term decisions. But here's the part that matters most. This story isn't just about the U.S. government. It's about all of us. Because the same habits that create national debt can quietly affect our personal finances too. Think about how most people get into financial trouble. It's usually not because of one huge purchase. It's because of small decisions repeated over time. Buying things you can't really afford. Making only the minimum payments on a credit card. Delaying saving for the future. Those choices don't seem dangerous at first, but over months and years, they compound. The exact same principle works in the opposite direction. Saving a little every month, investing consistently, avoiding unnecessary high-interest debt, living below your means. Those habits compound too. That's the biggest lesson from America's debt story. Compound interest is always working. The only question is it working for you or against you? You can't control government policy. You can't control interest rates, and you can't control the national debt. But you can control your own financial decisions. You can build an emergency fund. You can invest for the long term. You can avoid debt that doesn't help you build wealth. Because at the end of the day, financial success isn't about predicting the next economic crisis. It's about making smart decisions consistently, no matter what the headlines say. So the next time you hear someone mention America's debt, don't just think about trillions of dollars. Think about the lesson behind the number. Small financial choices made consistently over time can either build your future or quietly limit it. The choice is yours. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more simple, story-driven explanations about money, investing, and the psychology behind building wealth. Because the better you understand money today, the better prepared you'll be for whatever tomorrow brings.